Welcome back. It's chapter 6, session 1, and we will now begin the discussion about integrity and compassion. And so, as I said in the introduction, I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to be really profound for a lot of you, not just personally, for how you're going to interface within your family dynamic, but also at work. And it certainly is going to be incredibly helpful when we teach our children this. And so, I remember my mother and grandmother used to say, you need to tell the truth, it's good for you. And they had no idea how profound that statement was and how accurate it was, because we're actually going to look at science and how science is actually teaching us about telling the truth. And so this particular story that I'm going to tell you is about, it's called Truth or Consequences. And so it's a very interesting piece of science that I think that you're going to enjoy. And so some of you who are really well read or really enjoy literature may remember Sir Walter Scott said, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." And so that is a big deal. So I want you to think about what that really means. Obviously, it means, oh, you lose track of what you've said, and then you end up, creating other little lies to protect the other lie, and then before you know it, it's a huge mess. And we've seen people do that, and maybe you've done that yourself. And so that is a really interesting thing that he said. Let's keep that in mind as we go through this next story. And so research is now clearly demonstrating that when we lie, it impacts our health. And I thought that was really fascinating when I first started studying about what happens to our brain when we lie. And in fact, it actually really creates a lot of problems in our brain. And as we know, our brain is the executive of our life. Your brain wants to live. And so when we're doing things and having our brain do certain things, it actually can harm our brain. It reduces longevity, it causes diseases. And so let's see what happens when we don't protect our brain with the truth, but instead we decide to lie. Now, there is a psychiatrist and neuroscientist at the University of Pennsylvania, and his name is Daniel Langleben. Now, he was actually doing a study on ADD. And so he was taking brain images and this type of thing. And what ended up happening is they discovered something that they actually weren't looking for in the first place, which frequently happens in the realm of science because we search for something and then we discover something else instead. So that's kind of a bonus, really. And so what he discovered was something really fascinating. And so this is actually a study of the same person. So on your page, when you're looking at this, this is the study of the brain, and it's the same person. Now, this person was given a series of questions when they were having an fMRI, which is a functioning magnetic resonance image. Excuse me. And so this image is of the same person, but you're going to see different colors based upon the questions this person was being asked. And so the red indicates areas of the brain that have been activated while this person was lying. And so they would ask this person questions. They would say, let's say this was a man, and they said, are you a woman? And he should say no, but he was instructed, this series of questions we're going to give to you, you need to lie. And so this person would lie. And as a result of it, red images would show up on the brain. And then they would ask a series of questions that the individual was supposed to tell the truth with. And so they would ask a series of questions, and this individual would tell the truth, and it would show up as blue on the brain. And so what do you think? I want you just to spend a second or two, and I want you to look at this brain. And it's the same brain. And kind of figure out what's going on in this brain. Okay, what's happening to the brain when there's red pieces? Where are the red, indicators? Look at the blue. How much of a difference is there between the two? Is there, something to be said about the red versus the blue? Why the different colors? And so think about that just for a minute. Okay, so let me explain this to you. In terms of understanding the brain and evaluating the brain during these images, what happens is that they look at the level of blood flow to the brain, because that tells the scientists how much activity is taking place in that specific region. And so if there's an intense, sudden blood flow, and it's a lot of blood flow, it's going to increase the temperature of the brain. And so the red indicates hot. It's much hotter than the rest of the brain. So you have that information. And the blue represents cool, that there's not a sudden rush of blood to one certain area, but that it's dispersed and the brain is operating kind of a little cooler than the rest of the brain. So now that you have that, I want you to think about how lying impacted this brain. Okay, so what do you think? Well, what's interesting about this is that when you lie, you get a sudden rush of blood to very localized regions. It's not really the whole brain necessarily operating. It's just very specific regions. And it heats that area of the brain up. Now, is that good for your brain or bad for your brain? And even if it's a white lie, it's bam, it's really fast. And so it's like, okay, it happens really fast. And so it's like, okay, so is this helping my brain function properly? Now think about when you're telling the truth. You notice that more of the brain is operating. It seems more, maybe more relaxed. It's operating, it's cooler. And so it's not overusing itself. And so I guess a good illustration would be, okay, so let's say a grown man or a grown woman decided to exercise when they are going to go to work every day. And so they get on a little tiny tricycle. Okay, that's made for a child. And they, they're working really hard to try and get to the, their place of employment. And so what happens to the tricycle in a very short period of time? Well, it breaks down. And that's what happens to our brain. And so when we spend a lifetime lying, even if it's just white lies, because your brain's not making a distinction if it's a white lie or not. It's a lie. And so it will, bam, it will just suddenly have a rush of this blood flow. And as a result of that, the brain actually is injuring itself. And as a result of that, we end up with all kinds of health problems, autoimmune diseases, cardiovascular problems, depression. We end up having all kinds of mental health problems because we aren't protecting the very organ that helps to keep us alive. And so it's a very fascinating, very intense, and very obvious study that when we lie, it's not good for our health at all. And so that's something for us to really think about. Now, I want you just to spend a moment and reflect on the times that you have lied. And maybe look at your health picture. Are there some health issues that you've been battling and that become chronic with you? Is there depression? And there's really, from an outsider's view, there's really no reason for you to be depressed, or why are you, having these other health issues that really don't run in our family? It could be a number of different things. I want you just to spend just a moment asking yourself, am I really telling the truth, or am I kind of bringing some of this stuff on myself? Okay, so you've had an opportunity to reflect about this, and this takes us to our next life lesson. And our next life lesson is life is managed, not cured. So I want you to think about that. Life is managed, not cured. In other words, we have to make decisions every day on how our life is going to play out. And we are ultimately responsible for how our life is playing out. We're ultimately responsible for our health, our relationships. We're ultimately responsible if we tell the truth or not. And so life is not a disease that you're needing to take a pill for it and try to fix life. That's just not going to happen. That's not realistic. It's not part of human beings. It's just not what's going to happen. Life is not a disease. Life is a gift. And we need to treat it like a gift. And we need to say, hey, I've got the world by the tail. I'm going after it. And that means I'm going to be the authentic self, because that's where I'm going to find my strength. So reflect on your new life lesson. This is your 6th life lesson that you've had, and maybe you've already discovered that you have a favorite life lesson. Maybe you have several favorite life lessons. For some of you, this may be the life lesson for you, because you realize I need to look at life differently. Life is not a bag of tricks for me. Life is to be enjoyed and managed, and I'm the manager that's going to do it. Okay? So spend some time thinking about that, and then we're going to tackle the next session. Okay.